Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to be having a chat today with a lady that really needs no introduction at all. The brilliant broadcaster, sports presenter, journalist and author, Clare Balding. Hi, Clare. Thank you so much for having a chat with me today.
You're welcome. I'm looking at your gilet thinking I have one exactly the same.
They're lovely, aren't they?
Very nice.
Yes.
Is it a Natalie one?
It's a Natalie dressed one, yeah.
Made of recycled plastic?
Yes. It is. They are so comfortable. I live in mine. They're great, aren't they?
Yes, I'm slightly relieved I'm not wearing mine as well, otherwise that would look a bit twinny.
Oh dear. So Clare, can you tell us a bit about your most recent and first non-fiction book and who it's aimed at?
Yeah, I can. It's called Fall Off, Get Back On, Keep Going. And the subtitle is 10 Ways to Be at the Top of Your Game, which sounds like I know how to be at the top of my game, which I don't, of course, but I certainly know how not to be. It's aimed at, I would say, 8 and up, but some 7-year-olds might absolutely lap it up. And to be honest, although in book, they like to give books a kind of a bracket, so they would say 8 or 9 to 11. I would say 8 to 108, because I don't think there is an upper limit on it. I've known teenagers pick it up and go, God, that's really useful. I've never heard it put like that before. And because it's practical, how do you cope in a situation where you might hear something said that really upsets you or upsets one of your friends? How do you speak up for them or indeed yourself? How do you practice patience? How do you make patience your superpower? And I use examples of people in sport, like Roger Federer, who was famously impatient when he was a teenager and used to throw tantrums when he was playing matches, and then has become the guy that you watch and you think, well, that's the epitome of patience and the grace with which he plays. And it's impossible now when you watch him to think that he was ever a bit of a brat. And I think it's quite comforting for kids particularly to know that really successful people like J.K. Rowling have experienced moments or indeed months or years of abject failure. I mean, she gave this amazing speech at Harvard University all about failure. And I quote her in the book saying, we talk all the time about success. She said, but actually way more important in your life is how you cope with failure, because we all will have mistakes.
Yeah.
So using the concept of falling off, and obviously I spent my childhood falling off ponies and horses, and my dad said we had to fall off 100 times before we could be proper jockeys. So my brother and I took that as gospel and started falling off on purpose. That actually that dealing with falling off really equips you well for life. And it's only when you get into your 40s and 50s that you can look back on things that happened, in my life when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 20, 30 and go, oh, I understand. That's why I did that. That's what I should have done. And this is what, if I could do it again, this is how I would do it. So really, that's what the book's about. It's 10 different chapters covering things like, as I mentioned, patience, confidence, the cloak of confidence, that chapter is, which literally is about getting a cloak out of your cupboard, an imaginary cloak, and putting it on to make you comfortable. And whether it is something like wearing your gilet, I promise you, as soon as you put that on, you feel comfortable.
Yes.
So when you go into a situation where you might not feel comfortable, you've got that kind of security blanket. Courage. There's the chapter actually about the brain. There's quite good statistics in there about how many thoughts our brain is capable of in every given day, and the fact that 80% of those thoughts will be negative. And even just understanding that your brain functions like that. So this doesn't make you unusual. It's just what happens, and how do we deal with it? I think that's really helpful. I find it helpful. And because I've written fiction for kids before, I went around a lot of schools, and really it was talking to kids and asking them questions and hearing their answers that made me realize maybe this would be a helpful thing to do for them.
Absolutely brilliant. I definitely look forward to reading it myself. As you say, I think helps adults too.
Well, even things like controlling your breathing before a big moment, or having a blast of a cold shower for 10 seconds in the morning,
Yeah.
those things I do. So
Yeah.
it's that's why I say there's no upper age limit to it. I was talking to I'm doing a business conference next week, and we had our our briefing call yesterday, and we were talking about it, and the guy who's introducing me, he said, I so thought this was a book for business. He said, I really thought, oh, well, that fits totally. I said, listen, it'll work for business. It's 10 short chapters,
Yeah.
you don't have to just think it's a kid's book.
No, it's just great. I mean, that sort of leads me on to saying, you're mentioning about schools. Well, it's certainly a book I will be buying for myself and for the children to read, but it sounds like it should almost be made part of the school curriculum.
Well,
it's being marketed to schools.
yeah, absolutely. And there's a video that goes with it, and I know teachers are using it and teaching with it. And actually, I'm going to do a school assembly here in London next week to talk about it, and in the autumn when I can, when we can travel freely, because I'd much rather appear at schools in person. Virtually. I think it makes such a difference. And I think everybody's kind of over the whole Zoom thing now. I think
I think they
I
are.
mean, it's very useful in situations like this,
but in person's better, isn't it?
Yeah. So I know that some teachers are using it, and there are support slides and a video if required.
I'd love to get it out to schools my children are in. Definitely.
And it's that classic thing of, there's probably not anything in there that you haven't tried to say to your kids, but you know what it's like. They won't listen to you. They quite often won't listen to a teacher, but oh look, there's the woman who pops up on the telly doing the Olympics. Oh, okay.
No, they're far more likely to listen to you. Definitely. And Claire, can you share any example of any really important life lesson you have learnt while growing up, where you've had to cope with failure, brush yourself off, and I suppose get back on?
I think the biggest example, and I do talk about this in the book, is at school. I think one is, and I know this from personal experience, I was so desperate to fit in with the in crowd that I would do anything that they were doing, even if that included shoplifting from the local shop. And of course, who gets caught? I do. And I think that being able to resist peer pressure and being confident enough to be different and understanding that's your strength, that it's not a weakness, I think that's the biggest life lesson. That I unfortunately had to go through, because honestly, the shame of being dehoused and suspended, I mean, my God, it was still something that would make me blush with shame 20 years later.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's only now that I think, okay, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have the set of friends that are still my friends today. I wouldn't have reset the button, literally turned the computer off and started again.
Yes.
And eventually, and also I'm not sure I would have the humility and the vulnerability, if you like. I wouldn't understand it as much as I do if that hadn't happened to me. And for all that I wish it hadn't, I realise now the benefits that I have gleaned.
Well, it's amazing what one learns, and it's not until things go wrong that you actually learn the lessons, is it?
And I think you also understand then your own strength. And now I know, and certainly in the industry I'm in, it's not about the glory years or the times you're winning awards. It's so much more about delivering on a professional level every time, and keeping going. I know that's not the glamorous sexy thing, but keeping going is the biggest attribute you can have, the ability to keep going, do the boring stuff. Look at someone like Andy Murray, who is extraordinary for his resilience. He does the dull stuff every day and learns to love it and relish it. And I watch, I love watching training. I love watching cricketers training or footballers training, and understanding, or people riding horses. It's all the work you put in at home that then gives you the great day where everything goes right. But you're going to have a lot of fences down. You're going to have a lot of refusals. You're going to have a lot of falls along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you must have heard so many inspiring stories from sports people, athletes that you've interviewed over the years, when they've achieved great things and sometimes against all the odds.
Yeah, and I've tried to include some of those. So take someone like Adam Peaty, who is certainly the fastest breaststroke swimmer in the world has ever seen, let alone Britain has ever produced, and we've got quite a good history of breaststroke swimmers. He was scared of water when he was a boy. I mean, he's now the greatest swimmer in the world. So you just go, how did that happen? And how did he overcome that fear? There's a story in there about Bethany Hamilton, who's a surfer, an American surfer, who had her arm bitten off by a shark.
Oh.
And a month later was back in the water, and a year later was winning her first US national championship. And she was only a teenager when this happened. I've used Sky Brown, who's the skateboarder, as an example of having of the confidence of youth. She was due to compete in Tokyo, obviously, last year when she'd have been 11. She'll be 12 this year. Actually, had the Olympics gone ahead last year, she wouldn't have been there because she had a massive fall about 2 weeks before the Olympics were due to start. I mean, really bad, the biggest wipeout of her life, of her young life, and ended up in hospital with everything smashed up, broken.
Yeah.
And her immediate thought was, when can I get out? When can I get back on my board? What's my program now for the Olympics? I mean, it's just great. I mean, it's really, they are all examples that I think you can look at and go, gosh, for A, I never knew that, and B, I didn't realize they'd had it so bad. And there isn't a single person, I don't think, who's been successful who hasn't experienced major heartache or failure along the way.
Blood, sweat and tears.
Yeah.
And so do you think with the pandemic over the last year, do you think in a way that helped you with your book and sort of getting it all sorted out with the normal speed of life being put on hold? Did that sort of in a way play into your hands?
Yeah, I mean,
I know you messed around with the Olympics and not knowing.
Yeah, I mean, everything I was due to do last year got cancelled. Every major event I was due to do. The last one I did was Crufts, and then the boat race got called off, and then everything after that. So badminton, Wimbledon, the Olympics, the Paralympics, Burley, everything. And obviously all the corporate jobs I do, because I do a lot of dinners and awards ceremonies, of course, all of those went. So suddenly I had, a lot of time on my hands. And luckily I had 2 book projects going. So I had Heroic Animals that came out at Christmas, and this book that's just come out. And that really gave me a structure to my days and a purpose, frankly.
Yeah.
It was massively important for my brain and for my sense of worth to have something. And also I knew when I was writing it that it sort of was more necessary than ever.
Yeah, very.
So I was very aware of how much parents were feeling they needed to do something and weren't sure what to do to help their kids. And that feeling of helplessness for parents, I think, is really awful, because the one thing you want to be able to do is make it right, and yet you couldn't make it right. And also then you've got the kids at home, and that's quite frustrating, and they're frustrated, and all their sports events cancelled, and
the whole thing,
be able to farm them off to are cancelled. So I'm very aware of that. And from the kids' point of view, their structure has gone, their network has gone. For boys in particular, who, so, a gross generalization, but generally speaking, aren't quite as good at the chit chat, but are very good at doing things with their friends. Let's go and play a game. Let's do the we hung out. Weren't able to do that, and are too much on the screen. So that's tiring and not great for them. And I think I just kept thinking as I was writing it, gosh, the pandemic's bound to be over by the time this comes out. I wish I could get it out now, but children's books take a long time because of the illustrations and the layout, and that every single, you rewrite about 5 times, if not more. I mean, it's amazing how forensically we went through this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then by the time it did come out, the pandemic was still is still ongoing. Lockdown was partially lifting, and then I was aware of how much kids actually going back into school were still finding that really difficult. The gear change
Yeah.
has been hugely awkward. So I think it's a book that will continue to be useful, but maybe this is its absolute hotspot.
I mean, it's perfect timing, because I think children are finding it hard to get back into normal life, and they've been so used to being at home. And
yeah,
it's
that's
difficult for them.
definitely true. And I don't know whether I don't know how your kids are dealing with it, but the things they have found difficult are not always the things we would expect.
No, absolutely. No, it's tough, definitely tough. And I think, depending on what your children are like, one child might be, actually, I have one that's quite happy homeschooling, and actually will be quite happy not to sort of go and see, not to be having to interact, when the other one is sort of totally, well, bereft, not being able to, go and see their mates and all that sort of thing. They're all different and react differently, I suppose.
Yeah, and one of the other things I've tried to really get the message across on is that I think if you can find a way of turning the camera in your brain outwards rather than on selfie mode,
yeah,
it makes such a difference. So if you are looking at other people and trying to help other people and conscious of other people's insecurities, you are less then focused on your own, and I think less absorbed by yourself. And even if it's looking out the window at springtime,
yes, taking note of other things going on.
Yeah, so it's slightly more, yes, okay, there's the classic be present message in there,
Yeah.
but the bigger part of the message is look outwards, because when we do this, we shrink when we just look inwards.
Yeah.
And if constantly every photo you take, literally or metaphorically, is you in the center of frame rather than the view behind you, I think it leads you to be very self-critical, and that's not the most interesting position to take.
No, or healthy, I suppose. And is there anything that you've learned about yourself from the actual process of writing this book? You say?
Yeah, I think it's always with writing, and I've written quite a lot of books now. It's my fear. So I didn't write my first book until I was 40, near enough. So My Animals and Other Family came out in 2012, just off the back of the end of the Paralympics, actually, in London. So perfect timing. And I didn't think I had the discipline to do it. I just kept thinking, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. And I then made myself do it, and you have to as well when you've got a contract. You've got to deliver by a certain
no going back.
Don't half focus your mind when you've got a deadline.
Yeah, sure.
But I then subsequently getting the voice right for a younger reader and seeing the world through their eyes a little bit, I think is really valuable. I think that really helps me understand more. And I'm very easily distracted. I've got a, proper butterfly brain in terms of popping around and wanting to do lots of different things and needing stimulation and needing variety. So it was good for me to have to focus, and it gives me real pleasure in focusing and saying, here is something that's taken a long time and a lot of work to produce, and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
And being brave enough to do and say that, actually.
Absolutely.
And it makes me feel like I achieved something in 2020.
You'll be one of the few that feels like they've achieved anything. Do you think that the last year has made you sort of reassess your priorities in life? What's important to you? I think it's probably made a lot of us look at our lives and sort of do a rain check.
Having said I need lots of variety and I need lots of stimulation, I do, but I coped very well with not having that. I missed the adrenaline of live events, but I didn't miss being on television. I really don't need the attention. I don't need that. I do enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the job, but I don't really care about the other stuff, that comes with it.
Yes.
It made me realize I'll deal quite well with retirement as long as I
That's good.
walk every day, and get outside. And I really, I mean, I missed hugely going home. I mean, I couldn't go home for Christmas because London suddenly went into group 4 or whatever we were. So everything was, and I missed that. I mean, I love Christmas, and I love the buzz of Christmas, and I didn't see my parents or the kids for a very long time.
No, it's really sad, isn't it?
And that I really struggled with. But Alice and I did the family quiz every Saturday night. So Andrew and Annalisa's friends, so about 5 families, we had a really competitive quiz every Saturday night.
Oh, how brilliant.
We did the questions for it, and we did quite enjoy that.
Yeah, well, it's a nice thing to look forward to, isn't it? And focus on.
Yeah, so we kind of kept connected through that.
Yeah.
But, I think it's difficult for kids because if you put them under pressure of a Zoom call and how are you, what have you been up to,
they go a bit mute.
They do, and I don't want them to feel under pressure. So actually it was easier doing a quiz because you kind of get a vibe of how
more relaxed, isn't it?
And you can see them, and we're all kind of sharing the experience together.
Yes, not focused on one person, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that was, it's a poor substitute for being there in person, but it was it's one of the things I'll remember about lockdown with the Saturday night quizzes, and thinking of questions all week long and think, that'll be a good one for the who am I
good, isn't it? Focus on something, isn't it? Have you ever thought about giving Jilly Cooper a run for her money?
Funnily enough, I was interviewing her at the Cheltenham Literary Festival ahead of the book. Might have been the racing one. Was it called Jump?
Jump, yeah. Yes.
Loosely based on lots of people we know. Yeah. I was interviewing her at that, and she said to me backstage, "Why aren't you writing adult fiction?" And I said, "Because I can't do the sex scenes. I don't want to.
I don't play.
You don't have to, darling. You don't have to. You can just disappear upstairs together, and you make it what you want to make it." So no, I mean, I haven't dared think that, but I'd really like to write a screenplay one day. I would really love to write a screenplay.
Well, plenty of time.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Yes, definitely. I can't do an interview without just asking you about the Olympics. What are your thoughts on Tokyo, sort of without international fans?
Well, funny enough,
if it will go ahead at all.
Well, I was wanting them to make the call on international fans much earlier than they did, because I felt as soon as they can control athletes and entourage, you can keep them in their zones. You can, they can only go in accredited areas. You can test them and indeed vaccinate them. You can keep that under control. You can't keep fans under control because they're going to roam everywhere. They're tourists. So I'm quite pleased they've made that decision. There's obviously still quite a lot of local opposition, but I do think that, technology, the Japanese are very, very advanced technologically, and also they're very, as a nation, they follow rules extremely well, and I think they will be all over this.
Yes.
I am encouraged that that Pfizer are providing vaccinations for free, because I felt the one big problem, and this is true of the Paralympics as well, was going to be the disparity between those countries who had a vaccination program that was really advanced and those that didn't, and that is a huge relief. I mean, I love the Olympics and the Paralympics. I've been working on the Olympics since 1996, since Atlanta, and the Paralympics since 2000 in Sydney. So this has been a huge part of my life, and I know how involved, particularly here in Britain, we get in the whole, from the opening ceremony through, and that we will be up at 4 a.m. if that's when Katie is swimming in its final. We'll be up for it. Or when Laura Kenny is going for her second gold medal of the games, or whatever it is. So that you know, I really believe in its, not just its entertainment value, but its power, in the sense of when you see a nation, let's take Fiji, who won their first Olympic gold medal in rugby sevens in Rio, or Puerto Rico, Monica Puig was for their first gold medalist in tennis. When you see the reaction that that country gives to the result, or indeed the reaction of the players or player, you just think, oh my God, this is phenomenal. There's nowhere else you see that pride and that joy and the representation of your whole country. And none of them get to do that any other time. So
That's
it's
incredible.
The biggest showcase of sport. It's a huge variety of sport, and I really enjoy that, and I care massively about it. And I think it has a power to you know, a real power to change things. And you see, particularly the Paralympics, obviously, you see such a huge variety of ability.
Yes.
I say that very consciously because I think the Paralympics is all about ability. It's not about disability.
No.
It is about disability, but it's about ability.
Yeah.
And I think that is, you know, that changes everything. And I think with, you know, I've always thought the two things that in sport that have that wider impact are women's sport and Paralympic sport, because I think they change the way people think. They change the way, you know, kids watching what they believe they're capable of.
Yes.
And it's all that I care about, as well as, you know, as much as I care about the gold medal count.
Yeah.
But, you know, you think about equestrian sport and the great Olympic moments, Mark Todd winning gold on charisma, or, you know, the show jumping team in LA, or, you know, Charlotte Dujardin in London, and Nick Skelton. Oh my God, Nick Skelton.
Oh, that was incredible.
In London, and obviously the individual gold medal in Rio. I mean, those are just great moments. And I feel for the athletes, you know, it's much harder. Obviously, it's much harder for them. I can do other things. I can get, and I know if I've had to learn to be really flexible in my mind and not be locked into the calendar, because these things
are hard.
Oh, you know, it's not. You just learn to deal with it. It is what it is. I've never had so much disruption, and actually.
Well, there's no option, is there?
No, there's no option, and it's the same for everyone. And I'm not an athlete, so it's not like my whole training regime has just gone up in smoke, and I'm hanging on in there trying to not get injured or not age for another year.
No, exactly. And I mean, I'm sure you have lots of favourites, Olympic memories, but is there one that you'd say really stands out?
Well, I was, you know, Nick Skelton I know extremely well, so that was a wonderful moment, both in Rio and London. And he was so moved by it. I mean, gosh, the image of him when he got on the podium with the team in London and his bottom lip started to go during the national anthem. And it sort of makes me choke now thinking about it. And the other great moment was the hockey team winning gold in Rio on a penalty shootout. And, you know, Kate Richardson-Walsh is just captain, fantastic. And I love that team. And I just thought that was such a wonderful, because hockey is a tough sport, my God. And I always find it amazing that women's football got banned for 50 years, but hockey never did. It's like women's football
the other way around.
Supposedly dangerous.
Hockey,
no, that was not dangerous. No, that's fine. Yeah, they can still get.
There's great sticks.
I know, but that was really thrilling. And Krista Cullen is a good friend of mine and was in that team, and Kate and Helen I know pretty well, and I just thought the heroics of Maddie Hinch as well, and the fact that she made goalkeeping cool. The whole generation, they all wanted to be goalkeepers. That was wonderful. I think also Andy Murray winning his gold medal in London. That then set him up in terms of winning Wimbledon, and that was epic. And then of course he defended it in Rio. I mean, you sort of forget that he did that. That's amazing. And I just think it's a wonderful, I mean, and we are pretty international in our coverage on the BBC. You know, I loved watching Usain Bolt dominate sprinting. And I think that if you go to America, which I have been in America when the Olympics is on, you wouldn't know there was any other nation competing. I mean, literally, they'd barely cover it. They'd cover the American finishing in silver medal position rather than Jamaica taking gold. I mean, it's extraordinary. And obviously for me, because I was there covering the swimming in London, Chad Leclos beating Michael Phelps was a great moment. And I got to interview his dad afterwards, and that was phenomenal. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I've,
Look at my boy, my beautiful boy. Look at him.
yes, yes, that was amazing. That was just so amazing. Getting really caught up in the emotion. You really get the emotion of it all, don't you?
I think also that what Bert did was embody and bring to life everything that a parent feels
yes,
when their child does something that they were told was impossible, and beating Michael Phelps in that event was deemed impossible. So I just loved his, it was the way he said what he said. It's not really what he said, it was the way he said it.
Yes.
And his, his energy and his, he just jumped out the TV screen. I think he jumped through the camera.
Charming.
Into people's lives, into their hearts. And they really cared about this young South African swimmer they'd never heard of,
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. It is amazing. And what's your favourite sport, Claire, apart from racing?
Well, actually, eventing is very much my number one. So I'm really upset about, having no Badminton and Burley for 2 years running is really...
It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I really missed Olympia at Christmas because the kids love that, and it's a fun thing to be out together. And
it's so Christmassy, and it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, so I love eventing and show jumping, and I really enjoy golf. I mean, I play golf. I love watching it. I love watching tennis. And actually, I was at a meeting this morning talking about cricket and the 100 that's coming up this summer, and the opportunity it offers women's cricket to really be on a level playing field, and that's hugely exciting. So there are very few sports that I don't enjoy watching, but I have a few favourites. And rugby league, and I'm president of the RFL at the moment, which is the Rugby Football League. And we've got the Rugby League World Cup this autumn, so I will be going to a lot of matches. And again, it's the first World Cup that has been men's, women's, and wheelchair all at the same time. And the men's and women's final will be on the same day at Old Trafford, and that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge.
Yeah, and it's a great sport. It's hugely entertaining. My father's appalled because he's obviously a big rugby union man, as most people in the South are. But I say to him, Dad, rugby league is so much better. There's none of the endless rucking and mauling and all of that. It's a slick, fast running game. If you want to see tries scored, watch rugby league.
Do you think you'll ever convert him?
No. I won't.
No. Oh dear. And Claire, how involved are you with your bro, Andy's career? It's great.
Not at all. Not at all. I wish I could claim any credit for it. No, I'm not at all involved. And I have one horse that I bred in training who's called Sporting Icon. A very ambitious name. He's by a recorder. Who was a stallion of the Queen's that she had in training with William Haggis. Out of Rebecca Romero, who was named after an Olympic athlete who competed in
very apt
cycling and rowing. Yeah, and therefore exactly. So I've called him Sporting Icon, and I think that's a Derby winning name.
Yeah, and is
he hasn't run yet. So
so he's not running in the Derby then.
No, well he's only two.
He's two.
So he may yet. The dreams are still alive.
Well maybe next year.
This is it, and that's what I say. This is a Derby winning name. It may end up being a champion hurdle winning name, but that's fine.
I don't mind. That would be great.
Yeah.
And Claire, finally, when you're not rushing around flat out chasing your tail, what would be your perfect day?
I would say either a really nice long walk with Alice and the kids and the dogs at home, or a round of golf in which I'm playing really well.
Yes, of course.
That
having a good day.
Yeah. Or indeed cross country day at badminton's pretty close to a perfect day.
Yeah.
I do love that.
No,
love that. And honestly, the riders are so approachable and nice.
Well, they're a perfect example, I'd say, of the name of your book. I think event riders are so grounded and nice people because they've had to go through, you're winning one day and then you're upside down the ditch the next day.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And you can't afford to be, I don't know, cocky.
No, you can't.
You just will be on your bottom.
Exactly. And I remember one year we had a massive delay. We were live on BBC on a Saturday afternoon, and we had this big delay, like 45-minute delay. And I ran into the riders' tent to grab people to interview. I cannot think of another sport where they could have so willingly given me their time, but also spoken so eloquently. And all the while us not really knowing what was going on. And I remember the producer saying in my ear, "Claire, we're coming to you live." And I said, what do you want me to say? And how long am I on for? He said, "I have no idea. We're about to find out. Cue Claire."
Oh my God.
And for 40 minutes I had to just keep going.
To wing it. And
yeah, but they were great. They were so good. And as I say, I'm not sure there's another sport I could have done.
No, I think you're right. Definitely. Oh, Claire, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So much. That really was just great to hear all that. And I'm sure all the Grapevine members will love hearing all that.
And they'll really thank me when their kids start falling off their ponies on purpose. On purpose, Well, why have you made them do that? And turning their showers to freezing cold.
Yes, yeah. Oh, well, save on hot water.
Yeah, that's true. At least I'm not telling them to have a hot bath.
No, exactly. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.